Have you ever been hooked on a TV series? You start watching somewhere in the middle of the series and we're drawn in. But then, at some point, you find yourself going back to the first season to uncover how it all began. I think of this as I reflect on the book of Acts. We know how the church looks today, but our study of Acts is like going back to the beginning and discovering how everything began. Hey friends, my name is Donna Amidon, and today we have the joy of diving into one of the most foundational moments in the early church. Let's pick up this powerful story beginning in Acts chapter 10, verse 1. At Caesarea, there was a man named Cornelius, a centurion of what was known as the Italian cohort, a devout man who feared God with all his household, gave alms generously to the people, and prayed continually to God. About the 9th hour of the day, he saw clearly in a vision an angel of God come in and say to him, "Cornelius." And he stared at him in terror and said, "What is it, Lord?" And he said to him, "Your prayers and your alms have ascended as a memorial before God. And now send men to Joppa and bring one Simon who is called Peter." Now, I'd imagine Cornelius did not see angels in his house every day. And so Cornelius did exactly what the angel said, and he immediately sent men from his house to find Peter. Now, the story shifts from Cornelius back to Peter, where God gives him an unusual vision. Starting with verse 11, it says, "Peter saw the heavens opened and something like a great sheet descending, being let down by its four corners upon the earth. In it were all kinds of animals and reptiles and birds of the air. And there came a voice to him, 'Rise, Peter, kill and eat.' But Peter said, 'By no means, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean.' And the voice came to him again, a second time, 'What God has made clean, do not call common.'" Now, why is Peter shocked? Why did he resist God? Because God was asking him to eat unclean animals, something a devout Jew like Peter would never do. But you see, this vision was not about Peter's lunch. There was a deeper lesson happening. God was preparing Peter to embrace what felt foreign and what felt uncomfortable. By telling him to consume something unclean, God was opening Peter's heart to an incredible truth. The gospel is for everyone, Jew and Gentile. Now, shortly after Peter's vision of the unclean animals, Cornelius' men arrive at Peter's house, and the Spirit speaks to Peter and tells him to go with Cornelius' men. And when Peter follows the men to Cornelius' house, we see the message beautifully unfold. In verses 34 and 35, it says, "Truly, I understand that God shows no partiality, but in every nation, anyone who fears him and does what is right is acceptable to him." And in verse 43, Peter shares the heart of the gospel. "To him, all the prophets bear witness that everyone who believes in him receives forgiveness of sins through his name." Are you seeing this? Everyone who believes receives forgiveness. The divide between the Jews and Gentiles crumbled, and the church was launched into a new era, all through what happened one day with Peter and Cornelius. You know, I love this story, and as I reflect on it, two things stand out to me. First, Cornelius was a godly man. Scripture states he prayed, he was generous, and he was respected, and yet he still needed the gospel. His good works were not good enough to save him. You know, this reminds me that no matter how kind or moral someone may seem, they still need the good news of Jesus. Secondly, this story shows us how God masterfully weaves people and prayers together for his purpose. Think about it. Cornelius was praying in Caesarea, and Peter was praying in Joppa. Neither of them had the whole picture, but both obeyed God's prompting, and their obedience carried the gospel further than anyone could have imagined. And here's where we can make this personal. The same God who orchestrated Peter and Cornelius' life is at work in ours. So let me ask you, what if God is preparing us for a conversation to come? An interaction with a neighbor, maybe an interaction with a coworker or an old friend. What if God is already moving in their heart and wants to bring your paths together? So today, let's remember that God has called us to live as his light in the world. And sometimes it's as simple as following his prompting and obeying the quiet whispers in our hearts. And as we do, we can trust his leading, knowing that God is weaving our prayers and obedience into his greater plan, a plan to bring light into darkness and answers to those who long to know him.